In what way do you think the area could be more age-friendly?
I think transport links are important. Obviously they've stopped the 16 bus, which has affected a lot of people who come into Chorlton. Things like pavements and roads with the uneven surfaces are being sorted out, hopefully. I think it's made me think about people's loneliness. That actually sometimes when things are there, people don't always take them up. I don't know whether it's because people are scared to come or whether people just don't want to bother. Or perhaps they don't know what sort of welcome they're going to get.
Hello, Louise. Right, you come to our Monday exercise class.
Yes.
Sunday teas.
Yes.
Trips.
Yes.
And you have a visitor, Joanna,
Yes.
who comes to see you once every fortnight.
Yeah.
So you live in Chorlton.
Yes.
Now, do you think Chorlton is a good place to grow older in?
Yes, I do think so, because I've grown old here, but I very much enjoyed it.
Right, okay. In what way is it good for you?
Well, there's plenty of places for old people to occupy themselves, and most lonely old people, they want to be lonely, really, because there's no need for it.
Because?
Well, some of them are selfish, really. They just don't want to be bothered with anybody. Just sit indoors and watch the television instead of getting out and, you know, enjoy yourself.
And
I miss a lot of the shops that we used to have. And I would think people who are perhaps less mobile than I am might find it difficult, you know. There are so many bars and that. I mean, when they first started the bars, I thought, oh, this is great, it'll bring life to Chorlton, but there are far too many now. I think the city as a whole could probably do more for older people. But as I say, I think, you know, in this area, we're just very lucky to have the Chorlton Good Neighbours.
I think they're a very suitable place for old people. You know, there's no hills, it's mostly flats so people can walk around, you know, so and there's plenty of parks and plenty of buses, and now we've got the metro, there's transport and everything. It's marvellous for us, yeah. Where I live, I have no neighbours, not that you can talk to, you know, understand. It's a mixed race, and you don't talk, people don't talk to you anymore, you know, like in the old days. All your neighbours next door, you could talk over the wall and everything like that, but you don't get any of that now. So,
no.
So my wife and I, in our 80s, you know, we don't have many people to talk to.
No.
Now, if you think about this, when you're in 60s, things like that, you know, but, you know, St Anne's, Blackpool and places like that near the seaside, but you lose all your friends then, that you've known where Chorlton 50 odd years, you know, you've got plenty of friends. But not neighbours, as you say, next door. There's no next door neighbours anymore. Our neighbours next door, they all moved out. You know, the young people seem to move out to Sale and all them places.
Yeah.
And then you got the different creeds coming in and everything, and they seem to take over in Chorlton. As you really start getting old, that's when it really starts hitting you. You used to like the theatre, you know, and it's now the problem. If it's got to be a really good show before we can make an event to the palace, or you know. But if you've got a little bit of community like Chorlton, people can gather together and stay friendly. But I feel that in, you know, in the, shall we say, Levenshulme and your long sites, and but, you know, up North Manchester, feeling it terribly. Yeah, I would say so.
People
personally,
feel
this
lonely.
is only my,
Yes.
So, but when you become ill, that becomes a problem when there's nobody to look after you at home.
Yeah.
And you've got to have people coming in twice a day or
Or
something
you've got
like
to
that.
pay it or something.
Yes,
yeah.
you have to pay now, don't you?
But people have got to be prepared to put themselves out, to come to groups and not just sit there and feel lonely and isolated. The big issue with a lot of the elderly people now is the loos. Even the people that I take out and go out with, it's one of the issues that they say to one another, where if we're going out, where can we go to the loo?
Would you ever move out of Manchester?
No, I don't think we would. We've had a place out in near Blackpool for quite a number of years, and I would have gone a few years ago. Now I wouldn't, because I like to be with all our friends and family around the area, and I think even when I worked, it never worked for people later on in life moving down to be with their sons and daughters, because they miss Chorlton Good Neighbours, they miss that coming out once and twice a week, and it's so important that you keep up with your friends and relations later on in life. There are, in Manchester itself, some very, very good people for the elderly, and it's just getting the right people on the right telephone numbers, which is an absolute nightmare. People should just have one number to phone, and that person should take that responsibility off them and get somebody to phone them back.
Yeah. Right, morning June. Now you live in Whalley Range, don't you?
Yes, I do.
So can I ask you, do you think it's a good place to grow older in?
It is a good place to grow old in, but there is a but to it. We need facilities to engage our brains and things like that, or even energy, and then you've got to come to Chorlton, primarily to, of course, Chorlton Good Neighbours. But at the moment there is nothing like this that is in Chorlton. There's nothing in Whalley Range. Whalley Range it's got very large houses or flats, and people don't get the same chance to meet each other. So we do have to come into Chorlton for meeting people, for social amenities. Also, the shops. Very easy to feel, and you do feel lonely, or you feel alone rather than lonely, I think. We feel living like I am in one flat, and there must be quite a few like that. But you have to make your own. You have to help yourself to sort of go and join or do. But as I say, I've got the car comes from Chorlton Good Neighbours, takes me to Good Neighbours.
Do you come across many people who say that they're very lonely?
No, I don't think they'd admit it. If they're the sort of people who feel lonely and won't say it, they're more likely to be the ones who would stay indoors.
I think it's a very difficult term to get your head around, really. The way that Manchester City Council and their age-friendly city initiative seems to think about it is a city somewhere that older people would like to be in. And I think that comes from the fear, or a lot of the research that seems to show that older people, especially those who've got the resources, will move out of the city when they retire rather than staying in it. But I've seen stuff elsewhere which say, in fact, one of the reasons people move out is because they can't afford living in the city, and the things that they need aren't there. So I think it's a mixture of the two. So I'd be very interesting to find out what, in fact, is the reality in Manchester. Do people leave it when they're older? Because they're, relatively speaking, I think, underrepresented in the city. So there must be something going on.
Okay.
So, yeah, but anyway, in terms of being age-friendly and whether round here or Chorlton is age-friendly, I think it depends on your own position. I think somebody coming in from the outside who's never been here before might find it quite difficult, because for me the most important thing as you get older are friends, people that you know the place, you know the people, and you feel, and you look around, for better or for worse, these are my people. You feel part of it. I always feel when I go somewhere else, even though I like it, like down south or something, that I don't know what the people are, and I don't know where they're coming from. They feel a bit strange, and I think maybe as you get older that becomes more important. I'm not saying you can't move, but to be in a place where you're familiar with it, I think is very, very helpful.
Yeah.
The practicality of having something like the metro, I think is really, really useful, because you can get it on it for free out of the rush hour, and it gets you right into the city centre and in the future to the airport and various other places. So I think that's a really big plus, though there are lots of places within Chorlton where there's a long walk to get to a metro, so it's not beneficial for everybody. And I think just simple things like pavements, and I've got a friend I've been helping push around in a wheelchair, and you begin to realise how difficult it is getting around some of the pavements in Chorlton in the centre. The pavements aren't wide enough. There are a lot of cracks in them. The time to get across at the traffic lights at the four banks is really hard, and you as a pusher end up really exhausted by it all after a while, let alone anybody else. Chorlton, I was brought up in Whalley Range and I now live in Chorlton, and Whalley Range it's a beautiful area. You've got Alexandra Park, which is a fantastic resource and is being done up now, and I think there's a good community spirit developed there as well. But there's a real lack of shops and other facilities, which I think is a problem. And there's an awful lot of houses of multiple occupations, some of which aren't in brilliant state, but that's improved enormously in the last few years. Chorlton has got a vibrant centre, though there are lots of vacant shops now, and there's a lack of variety of some shops. And you've got a place like Beach Road, which is probably unique in, well, not entirely unique, but it's fairly unique in Manchester, having it as a place where people go for entertainment, and there's a big nighttime economy. So I think that's a big difference between the two. And I think there is a difference between when you're mobile old and when you're immobile old. And I think that's I think Chorlton is as good a place to be immobile in the sense that I know what the facilities are, and whether it's whether there's going to be sufficient some sort of sheltered housing. And I think that's a really big problem wherever you live now, is that old people don't want to go into care. Nobody wants to go into care. But you do want a different type of environment, and it'd be lovely to have a sort of like more communal way of living that was a bit more sort of less sheltered accommodation, but where you got support. And there aren't really many of those type of things around in this area. Not being as used as well as they can, and maybe it's to do with the cuts in the terms, scheme managers aren't permanent there. You used to have far more resources to be able to call upon. Things aren't fixed as quickly. What I'm thinking of are a new type of one where you'd have a group of people living together more in a communal sort of way. And I don't know people talk about things, and there are ones going around the country. But I think something like that would be really good. I think there is a problem of loneliness, and I think that it's different from women and men. I think women are more likely to try and do something about it. Men tend to think that it's part of being a man to suffer in silence, and I think that is a real problem. I don't think the council initiative has actually addressed that particularly. What it seems to do is do an awful lot of research about what isolation there is, and then what does it actually really do about it? Because a lot of the services, and I'm not blaming the council for this, are being cut. So groups like Good Neighbours are getting more and more cases being passed on to them, which we can't really deal with. People with quite multiple needs that we can't meet. So I think for those people, the ones who are the most isolated, it's a really, really difficult problem, and in some ways you've just got to throw some resources at doing something about it. Because we know from bringing people who've got mobility impairments, it's a hell of a difference to doing that, getting somebody to come on a trip where you've got to have an accessible coach, you've got people to pick them up in cars that are big enough to carry their wheelchairs, you've got to be able to put the wheelchairs in the coach, have people at the other end to wheel them around where you're going. It's a big, big issue, and that's why our trips, I think, are often absolutely packed out, whereas trips elsewhere, when people are supposed to just look after themselves, don't cope for that group of people.
No.
Good morning, Bob.
Eh?
Good morning.
Good morning.
You live in Whalley Range?
No, I live in Chorlton.
Sorry, okay, on the borders of Chorlton and Whalley. So you, in fact, a lot of your neighbours are foreigners, but they actually do turn up trumps when you need them. Is that right?
Yes. Oh yes.
Right. Anything else about?
If you go back, Joyce was wiping a door in the morning room, and she fell on the back. I couldn't get her up. I got round next door, and he comes in, and Joyce was so thrilled. He's a big guy. He just picked her up.
Wow. So in fact, the fact that your neighbours are from different countries is not a problem, really.
I don't want to move.
No.
My son wants me out. My son wants it to go in somewhere where I get help. And I'm not moving.
So that you like living in your own house.
I'm planning to die in my house.
Anything else about growing old in Manchester?
I get a lot of assistance.
I mean, carers and things like that.
I pay for a cleaner. Well, she comes on a Wednesday for a couple of hours, and she does a lot of things for me.
You come here on your rollator?
I walk here.
Yeah, with the assistance of your handy rollator.
I couldn't walk without it.
No, of course not. No.
I come here because I have a chance to walk, and I get a lift home, so I'm not overdoing it.
Yes. And do you like coming here?
Well, yes, I do. Of course I do. I've got so many friends.
Well, I think there need to be some means by which the potential loneliness of older people needs to be dealt with, and I would sort of kind of friendship system where older people are not just left to fry and die is most important. I think you know that I also feel it's important to communicate also with them, not just to be with them, but to actually learn to communicate with older people in a friendly and sociable way.
You don't think people do that?
I think the whole art of conversation seems to have disappeared. Just ordinary conversation, like inquisitive conversation. You know, so what you as an old person, you want to, and then that old person would like you to be interested in him or her. You know, what did you do for a living? What, tell me about your family. Where do you come from? Da, 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 da. Well, in say visits to older people, it's not just the visit is one thing, but communicating, it seems to me, is very important as well. And people just don't seem to be able to do that. They kind of sit there, would you like a cup of tea? Da, 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 are you comfortable? You know, there's more to it than that.
Are you thinking of people like carers here, or just anybody?
I'm thinking of anybody, really, who visits an older person. Carers too, certainly. And carers are very bad at it as well.
Is Chorlton age-friendly?
Well, I think shops need to consider ways of getting in and out of their premises. I think, no, they're not age-friendly in that sense. It's quite difficult to get out, especially if you have a stick or a frame or some other equipment, a wheelchair. I think access is not well arranged in almost all the shops in Chorlton. But I must say, my own experience now is that sheltered accommodation is the ideal, because you have the advantage of both supervision and care, and a comfortable flat. But I think there again, I don't think one needs to assume that older people want too much independence. I mean, I think the difference between independence and loneliness, there isn't a big divide between those two. I think, one can think, well, I'm allowing that person to become independent, but are you sure you're not relegating them to loneliness? So that again, I think communication is very, very important.
Do you think?
Because no, I think getting old, becoming disabled, all these are stages in your life. And at each stage, it seems to me, it's important that the person is able to have some positive views of the future. So it's up to, one wants to encourage older people to keep having objectives in their life and helping them to achieve those objectives.
And presumably part of that is it's got to come from themselves as well.
It's got to come from themselves. but it needs to be encouraged and supported. Because I can often feel, well, my life is over now. You know, I'm 90, I'm sitting here, what can I do for the world? Da, 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 da. No, that feeling of impotence and the end of the life needs to be dealt with. They need to have some kind of positive outlook and a possible positive outcome. Doesn't mean that it will be that will be the outcome, or that they will find anything. But they must believe that life still has something to offer them, and maybe that they still have something to offer life.
If there was one thing you'd change in Manchester to make life easier for older people, what would it be?
I think this communication is very, very important. I think people should be encouraged to talk to elderly people, and to really converse with them, not just to talk at them or you know, about their needs, but actually to become interested, to become curious about them, in a way that one is curious about a friend.
Right.
Recently that has become kind of a crucial thing for me.
Mm-hmm.